Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing an adult contemporary mashup review of 3 books that I read in February. Those books are Roomies by Christina Lauren, The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory, and A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. So I'm basically just going to talk about these in the order that I read them in. So I'm going to start with Roomies by Christina Lauren. This book follows a girl named Holland, and she's basically living off of her 2 uncles. They are basically paying the majority of her rent, and one of her uncles got her a job working in the theater that he works in, and he is a music producer or composer. I'm not really sure which he is, but he has this really big show going on, and he is on Broadway. And something ends up happening where one of his musicians walks out on him, and he is in dire need of a new musician to fill this place. And he is just not having any luck finding someone who is good enough to fill in this spot. Holland is really obsessed with this street musician that she has stumbled upon, and she kind of goes out of her way multiple times a week to go and see him play. So she suggests to her uncle that, you know, he would be good enough to get this role. Her uncle goes and basically agrees with her, but then it turns out he can't accept the role because he is in the country illegally. So someone suggests that she gets married to him, and she actually goes and suggests that to him. And this is basically where the story kind of takes off. I had kind of mixed feelings about the story. I enjoyed it for the most part, but there were a lot of things that I had issues with. One big thing that I know, it wasn't really the main focus of the story, but her friend, the main character's friend throughout this, she had one of those friends that I just do not like, and I knew it was going to happen eventually. It was just something that the main character had to learn for herself, that this was just a toxic relationship, and you know, she had to learn when to let go. But that was one of the big factors for me, because it just kept happening, and she just kept ignoring the signs that this girl was jealous of her life, and she would try to put her down or take her own failures out on her. And I did not like that at all. So I was kind of frustrated with that, because it was going on throughout the majority of the book, and it took almost the entire book before the main character was just like, you know what, I've had enough of this. This is just not what I need in my life. So I didn't like that about it. But besides that, for the main relationship, I thought it was a pretty cute relationship. Obviously, going into this relationship, they don't know anything about each other, and they get into the situation where they basically have to join lives, but they don't know each other. And going into it, I felt like they did not open up enough with each other. And I feel like this is something that they should have done, especially considering the situation that they were going into. I feel like they should have talked a lot more than they did. So it was a lot of misunderstandings. A lot of things came up later on. And it was just like, I don't know if I should trust you, because there were things that were not said. And then on top of that, the way certain situations were handled, obviously I can't get into them because of spoilers, but there was one big part that happened towards the end of the story, and it was like the main character, they had gotten to a point where I feel like some of the stuff should have come up, but the main character, Holland, and then the guy main character, which his name is Calvin, it was just things happened, and I felt like it should have come up by the time we got to this major kind of twist, or we found out this major reveal, but it never did happen. And I was just really frustrated, and it seemed a little shady to me, because I was just like, you know, you claim that you feel this way or that way, but there are still things that you should have said at this point, especially considering it's just stuff I can't really talk about because of spoilers. But overall, like I said, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't necessarily the best story to me. I didn't leave it feeling absolutely amazing. I felt like I could see how things progressed to where they were, and I could see things possibly working out in the future, but as of, I don't know. I didn't feel completely satisfied with the story, and I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I have to talk about is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This book follows a woman named Alexa, and she is going to visit her sister because she is in town, and she is like at the hotel, and she ends up getting stuck in an elevator with this guy named Drew. And they get to talking while they're stuck in the elevator, and she finds out that he is actually there in town to go to his ex's wedding with a friend of his from medical school. So somehow one thing leads to another, and he asks her to be his date to this wedding because he doesn't want to go alone, and she agrees, and the story basically takes off from there. I have seen a lot of people talking about this one, and I felt like a lot of people did not enjoy this as much as I did, and I can understand their reasonings, but I think I might have enjoyed it for a different reason. First of all, I will say that this book is by a Black author, a woman of color. If you guys haven't seen my Black History Month recommendations video, but it's by a Black woman, and it follows an interracial couple. Now, I have never been in an interracial couple or anything, but I really enjoyed the take that this took, because we follow the main character Alexa, who is a Black woman, and there are a lot of things that come up in this, which I'm gonna take a pause and rewind, because those are some other thoughts that I have about this. But going back to the very beginning, I will say that although this is titled The Wedding Date, that portion of the book is not the majority. I believe within like the first 10 or 20% of the book, that whole part of the story is over with. But it is mainly following the after effect of her agreeing to go on this date with him, and them finding excuses to hang out with each other after this wedding is already over. And even though they have agreed that this will only be like a one night type of thing, it ends up turning into more than that, and they have to deal with their feelings and wondering if what they're feeling is real, and if the other person is feeling the same way. So this one is told in like a dual perspective, but it's like third person dual perspective. And honestly, I kind of took a little bit of my rating off because I didn't necessarily like the writing style. I thought that the writing style was a little weird. But moving on, like I was talking about before, this book kind of deals with a lot of different things that some people might not think about when it comes to interracial relationships. And I don't even want to just say like dating relationships, because when I moved out to Texas, I know this is kind of off topic, but being in a friend group, these are also things that I will worry about, because I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and all my life I was around mainly Black people. Even when I went to college and my school was a predominantly like white school, the people that I hung out with were predominantly Black, and I might have talked to a few white people here and there. So I was kind of in my little bubble for the most part all throughout most of my life. But then moving out here to Texas, I ended up hanging out with some white people, and there are some things that they don't necessarily understand about the way you would have grown up, or some discrimination that you might have to have dealt with because of the color of your skin, or some things that they might not even think about, like going out into a social situation and you having to wonder, like, am I going to be the only Black person there, because you know who their friends are. It's something that, not just because I wasn't in this type of relationship, I still have experienced these things, and I thought that was really well done. I just really appreciated all of those things, and being able to see the dynamic of the two of them, and him having to learn certain things and realize that everything isn't always as easy as he has grown up to see it be. And I just really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I don't want to say there wasn't a whole lot going on, but there wasn't as much like conflict going on like you would expect in a typical like adult romance. Like comparing these two, there wasn't as much happening conflict wise as it was in this one, but this one was more of a progression of like two people meeting and seeing how their relationship progresses from that one meeting point. But I feel like this one is a different type of romance that I have found myself enjoying a lot more lately. I just really enjoyed this one. It's one that I would recommend, even though I can understand everybody does not enjoy this one as much as I do. And like I said, I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I have to talk about in this video today is A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole, and this is the first book in the Reluctant Royal series. And I actually read the e-arc of this book and I enjoyed it so much that I decided to pick up a physical copy. This book opens up following a woman named Naledi Smith, and she is currently in graduate school studying epidemiology. And at the very beginning of the story, she receives an email saying that she is betrothed to an African prince, but obviously she doesn't believe it, so she I think she deletes it or puts it in her spam folder. But then she progressively gets more and more emails because she hasn't responded to these emails. And it's the same thing over and over. They're saying that she is the betrothed to this African prince and they need to confirm that it's her and to send in information. So she thinks it's a scammer and she's just not happy with it. On the other hand, we're following Prince Dabaso, and he is the sole heir to the throne of the Solo. So I'm pretty sure that he is close to taking the throne, and his parents are really focused on him getting married at the moment. So he sets out to go find his betrothed. Naledi is working towards what she wants, but it's not the best situation to be in for her just because she's working a lot. She's doing way more than she should have to. When the prince comes into the picture, he ends up showing up at her job to kind of figure out who she is or talk to her or something like that, and she mistakes him for the new guy who's supposed to be coming in for a position or whatever. And he decides to play along and act like he is this guy and get to know her without being known as the prince. And that's really where the story takes off. This is another story that I really enjoyed. I feel like it covered a lot of good topics. So one, we're dealing with women, and then also a woman of color in a STEM type field. And I feel like I don't read about that enough. And it's just something that's really nice to have out there. And then we're also dealing with the prince coming into this situation and him having to realize the privilege he has had, even though he's not necessarily happy with the life he has had to lead being the prince, but he has to realize where she's coming from and how she has grown up and the privilege that he has. And I really enjoyed seeing him come out of his bubble that he had been living in and see what it's like, especially for Naledi being in the situation that she was. I will say that though that this story was a little slow for me in moments. It took me way longer than I would have liked to read this because it's really not that long, because I ended up putting it down because it was kind of slow at moments and I didn't necessarily like that. And then I also wish that we might have been able to spend less time and like what took place in the 75% of the book. So a lot of the time was spent in New York when he came to find Naledi and him trying to get to know her. But although I really enjoyed most of those parts, I would have also liked to see more of the time where she went back to the Solo in Africa to get to know where she came from and see more of her family. It was just a lot that I felt like was left out that I would have loved to see. I really hope that this would get picked up for a movie. I don't know how likely that is, but I feel like this would make one of those really good romance movies. And it also has like some steamy moments in it, which kind of helped move the story along at different points. It's not too much. It's really focused on the two characters really getting to know each other. I believe I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, there were some pacing issues at certain points for me, and I also wish I would have seen more of the later parts of the book within this and maybe cut down on some of the beginning parts. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this, and I will be checking out more from this author, as well as continuing on with the series. I'm not really sure how many books there are planned to be in the series, but I know the next book actually follows this main character's best friend, Portia. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she does with that one. Here are the 3 books that I talked about today. For the most part, they were all pretty enjoyable. I think they would be good books for anyone who is interested in adult romance novels. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you read any of these 3 books, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys again in the next one. Bye.